Somewhere in the Russian Arctic, there's a hole in the ground deeper than any mountain on Earth is tall. And for decades, almost no one outside the Soviet Union knew it existed. You're looking at a hole so deep it eventually had to stop, not because engineers ran out of ambition, but because the ground itself started fighting back. This is the Kola Superdeep Borehole, and the real story behind it is far stranger than you'd expect. Start with the goal. In 1970, Soviet scientists began drilling into the Baltic continental crust on the Kola Peninsula, near the border with Norway. This wasn't a search for oil, gold, or minerals. It was pure scientific curiosity, wrapped inside a Cold War race for prestige. The Soviet Union wanted to prove it could outdrill the world, and along the way, actually see what the deep Earth was made of. At the same time, the United States was attempting something similar with Project Mohole, trying to drill through the ocean floor to reach the Earth's mantle. That American project failed early, undone by cost overruns and unstable seafloor conditions. The Soviets kept going. For 24 years, drills pushed downward, foot by foot, meter by meter. Engineers replaced broken drill bits constantly. The equipment had to be custom built because nothing existed that was designed to survive these conditions. By 1989, the hole reached a depth of over 12 kilometers. That's deeper than Mount Everest, is tall, turned upside down, and buried into the ground. To put that in perspective, if you dropped a coin into that hole, it would take over 3 minutes just to reach the bottom, tumbling through absolute darkness the entire way. But here's where the story gets strange. Scientists expected the rock to get harder, denser, and more predictable the deeper they went. Instead, they hit something almost nobody anticipated. At around 6 kilometers down, the rock became more porous than expected, filled with water that theoretically shouldn't have existed at that depth or pressure. This water wasn't from rain, or rivers, or any surface source. It appeared to be chemically bound within the rock itself, released only under the extreme heat and pressure the drill was now exposing. Geologist Yevgeny Karus, one of the lead researchers on the project, described something even more shocking. Fossilized microorganisms were discovered in rock samples estimated to be over 2 billion years old. This meant primitive life had existed far deeper within Earth's crust and far earlier in the planet's history than almost any scientist had believed possible at the time. Suddenly, the question was no longer just how deep humans could dig. It became a question of how far down life itself could actually survive. Then came the twist that eventually ended the entire project. As drills pushed past 12 kilometers, researchers expected temperatures to rise, but not by this much. The bottom of the hole reached nearly 180 degrees Celsius, far hotter than any of their predictive geological models had suggested for that depth. At that temperature, rock doesn't behave like rock anymore. It becomes hot and plastic, almost like thick candle wax, instead of solid stone. Every time engineers pulled equipment out to replace a damaged drill bit, the borehole would begin to slowly close in on itself before they could lower new equipment back down. The Earth, quite literally, was trying to heal the wound before they were finished making it. In 1992, after millions of dollars, dozens of broken drill bits, and over 2 decades of continuous effort, the project was finally abandoned. Not because scientists hit some impenetrable barrier of unbreakable rock, but because the planet itself became too hot, too soft, and too unpredictable to continue safely. Think about the scale of what this actually means. Humans have sent spacecraft nearly 250,000 kilometers to reach the moon. Rovers have driven across the surface of Mars, tens of millions of kilometers away. Yet the deepest hole ever dug into our own planet reaches barely a fraction of 1% of the distance to Earth's core, which sits roughly 6,300 kilometers beneath our feet. In other words, we know more about the surface of a planet 40 million kilometers away than we do about the ground directly underneath us. Today, the borehole sits sealed shut with a rusted, unremarkable metal cap, out in a remote corner of Russia, mostly abandoned and mostly forgotten by the public. There's no monument, no tourist sign, just a welded metal disc marking one of the strangest scientific endeavors of the 20th century. But the data it produced quietly rewrote scientific models of the Earth's crust. It proved that our planet's interior doesn't get simpler and more predictable with depth. It gets stranger, more porous rock than expected, water where there shouldn't be water, life where there shouldn't be life, heat that broke every model built to predict it. So the next time you look at the ground beneath your feet, remember this. Somewhere in the Russian Arctic, humans once tried to go all the way down, chasing curiosity further than almost anyone else ever had. And after 22 years, 12 kilometers, and one very stubborn planet, the Earth itself decided that some depths simply weren't ready to be reached.